to find out what's happening in China, ask people who are in China, not people who used to be in China, because China has changed so much. Incredible changes with poverty alleviation, rural revitalization, incredible infrastructure in the last 5 years. We've got bridges to Hong Kong, we've got high-speed trains. All of this is in the last 5 to 10 years. So anyone who was here in the 1970s, 1980s, 1990s has a completely wrong impression on China. Completely wrong. They don't understand China. The China they knew is not the China of today, and that's the most important thing that I can put across. If you are an expert on China, you really need to be in China. You don't need to speak Chinese. You need to be in China, experiencing. That way you get the expertise.
Thank you. All right. So, by the way, I'll introduce myself. My name is Hayford, but on YouTube, on this community, I call myself King Kwesi. And for over a period of 6 months, I started what is called Living in China series, whereby I interview foreigners and experts living and working in China to share their unique stories or a journey here. And I'm glad I found your Twitter space, and I DM you. We started talking, and now we're here.
Yeah, we're here.
So thank you so much for honoring my invitation to be part of this.
No, thanks for the invitation. I'm happy. I'm happy with that. Don't worry.
Right. I read from your YouTube space, your description, that you've lived in China for a period of 18 years. You've lived here, worked here, studied, married.
Yeah.
Can you please tell us a bit about your journey here, how you started?
Okay, I came here. I was an English teacher when I came here. My life here has changed dramatically from that, but I came here, I was made redundant living in Australia. I lost my job. I went to college, picked up a teaching certificate, and then came here with a view to staying just a few months, get a bit of experience, and then travel the world as a teacher. It's a portable skill that you've got, and you can earn money doing it. So I thought that would be a great way to see the world. I liked what I found here very much, and when my contract came to an end, I decided to stay, went looking for a new job, met the boss of the company and ended up married to her. And not the boss of the company, the manager of the branch where I was working, which was a language school. And then we set up our own business. I was teaching for a few years, then I moved into training as a corporate training. I have a background in that kind of thing. I was a business unit manager in Australia of a multinational corporation. And I took a master's degree in cross-cultural change management while I was here. And that helped me enormously to kind of come to terms with and understand the differences between, you hear these things. Why did he do that? What's he doing? Why is he not doing what I asked him to do? And there's always a reason for that. It's not always ignorance and it's not always stupidity. Quite often it's cultural, and I kind of looked into those sorts of things and started becoming a bit of a consultant and a bit of a trainer, and that's how I spent the next 3 years. Then I became an IELTS examiner. The IELTS exam. Right. I did that for a couple of years, or over a year and a half, and then I got to the point where I turned 60, and the rules in China, if you're 60 years of age, you can't have a full-time job or full-time visa. So I basically retired now, and I do a bit of editing, a bit of writing. I've done a lot of charity work. My wife and I are actively, or were, less so now since COVID, but for 15 years we were very active in charity, raising money for disabled people here. And then being basically unemployable is probably the best way to describe it. I found myself with a lot of free time on my hands, and I got involved in social media. I did, in 2014, a bike ride, and that bike ride was from the border of Macau, mainland China border with Macau, to the border of Kazakhstan in Xinjiang province, or Xinjiang region. It's not a province. And I found a lot of interesting things on my route, and I took a lot of photographs. I wasn't videoing or vlogging much about this at the time. I was cycling, and that was all I was interested in. But I found that got me into, a few years later, got me into the Twitter scene. I started posting pictures of my journeys in China. I've been through Xinjiang twice, once from the southeast to the northwest, and once where my wife and I flew to Urumqi and then cycled home again. So each time, several thousand kilometers through Xinjiang, and people were saying to me, hey, you can't go to Xinjiang, you're not allowed. And I'd say, well, you are. And I did. And here's some pictures. And I got a lot of followers who supported what I was doing. And that built up, it built from when I started, I had 2 followers, and one of them was my brother. And so I now have 71,500 followers, some of whom are quite nasty people. I tend to block a lot of people on Twitter because they tend to call me all sorts of nasty things and names because I support China. I'm very, very fond of this country. It's given me a good life. It's given me a very good lifestyle. I've worked very hard, but I've got the rewards for it now, and I'm really enjoying my life and supporting. I'm fully supportive of what the Chinese government do in almost every aspect. Not 100%. There are things I don't like. I particularly dislike the death penalty, and that came up in a conversation.
We actually come into that, yeah. But let me take you back a bit. 18 years when you go to China, can you give us an image of China 18 years ago when you go here?
It's very different. The thing to do is to give you a perception of what it was like before I came in my own mind. And it was much more modern than I expected. Much more modern.
18 years ago.
18 years ago, yeah, it was much more modern than I expected it to be. I had this idea of, kind of lots of rice farms and paddies with coolie hats and things like that. These impressions that you get from reading media. Now, you can find that, and it's not that far away from here, but the cities were just like any other city. Now, the thing I found, I moved to a city called Zhongshan. It doesn't have in its makeup, it doesn't have the history of, for example, London or places like that, where you've got hundreds or 1,000-year-old buildings. You don't really have that, but you do have some history, some historical sites, some historical buildings, but you don't walk around the corner and bump into a Big Ben or a Tower of London and things like that. So it's a modern, very, very modern environment. And when I arrived here, I would describe it as under-resourced, under-infrastructured. It was shaking off poverty, but it was definitely shaking it off. And you could see that. What we have now, 18 years later, is an entirely different story.
It's an entirely different story. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. But going back to that, it was a surprise to me that China was as advanced as it was. Now, I met people who were here for 5 or 6 years before me, and they said, "Oh no, you're lucky. They didn't used to have a road here." And I saw things that were new. If I'd been here 25 years, it would be an entirely different story.
Okay, so let's take it back again. I was asking you, can you 2 major changes that you've seen over the last 18 years of China?
The most important major changes are infrastructure, without a shadow of a doubt. We now have a bridge that goes to Hong Kong. Who would have believed that was possible? If you know the geography of this place, that's like a 60-kilometer bridge. We have a metro system coming very soon. We have a high-speed railway already existing. In fact, I'm catching that on Saturday or Sunday, I think, to travel to Beijing. So from my front door to Beijing is 10 hours. We have this kind of infrastructure. The city has built 4 universities in my time here. 4 new universities. It already had a couple, but it's built 4 new, and at least 2 vocational training colleges. So it's come a long way. It has a massive infrastructure growth. That's the major thing that you see.
Right. Major infrastructure growth over 18 years in China.
And cars.
And cars.
Yeah. When I came here, no one had a car. It was almost nobody had a car. We had roads, but no cars. Shopping centers were built without car parks. Now they're having to build these. Have you seen these elevator car parks? You park on the ground floor and it takes your car up. They're building those now because they built shopping centers without car parks 10 or 15 years ago.
Let me take you on this. So in your opinion, what do you think has really caused a major change in China? Like
what caused it?
18 years.
Oh, it's without a shadow of a doubt, the government caused it. They created it. They invest in the country, something which a lot of other countries don't seem to want to do or can't do. They're investing very heavily in, and a lot of people say, "Oh, yeah, they're wasting their money on this or that." And I said, "No, because what they're doing, things like the poverty alleviation scheme, what they're doing is they're building up future taxpayers. So if you're in poverty, you don't pay tax. If you've got a job and you've got an income and you've got a nice house and everything, you're starting to pay tax. You're buying things, you're paying sales tax or goods and services tax. You're earning income, you're paying income tax. You get a job, your company's paying the payroll taxes. So what's happening here is a short-term cost. The country's taking a hit, but it's a very much a long-term program. They don't need to worry about election cycles and things like that. They say, this is what we want to do within the next 35 years. And then they start on the plan to achieve that. And they're doing that. They're reviewing their plan every 5 years. So that's the cause of it. I wouldn't describe it as a cause. I'd call it more of a reason for it.
Living here for 18 years, I know you have certain things that you really cherish about this country. So keeping here for this long, can you give us some of the things that you really cherish about this country?
My family. I don't have children here, but I've adopted in-laws as parents. I have a mother and father-in-law. I have a sister and nephew. We have another sister who lives in Australia. But I'm very close to my Chinese family, and that's one thing I do cherish. I have a lot of really, really good friends here as well. Some foreigners and some Chinese. But yeah, I've made some good friends. I believe it or not, and this is what will surprise many people. I actually cherish the freedoms that we have here. Just last night, last night. I know
the word freedom here, I think, is relative. Can you explain to us? Because
well,
in China, people are gonna come after us.
We're going to have people saying you must be mad. There's no freedom in China, and they're wrong. They're totally wrong. Last night was a friend's birthday, and we went around the corner and sat in the street drinking beer and Canadian Club. He's a Canadian guy, and we had a bottle of Canadian Club that we bought from a shop around the corner, but we bought a couple of beers from this shop, and we sat on their table, and they cooked barbecue for us in the street. We drank beer, got barbecue, drank his Canadian Club. And it was just completely free to do that. It's not something you can do in the West without either incurring the wrath of the police. I mean, imagine barbecuing in the street in the West, whereas here they just set up the barbecue and say, okay, if it's your birthday, we'll cook some of this in the street, right outside. Cars parked there, traffic's going up and down, pedestrians, but that's okay. We can do that. Yeah. So that was interesting.
That's interesting, right? Freedom. Yeah. That's freedom for you. Now, living here for 18 years, I mean, what have you learned on this journey? Because I read from your description on YouTube that there are only just 2 provinces that you've not visited, or 3.
I think it might be 4 actually. It's not many. I haven't been to Taiwan, which is a province of China.
Right.
Even the Taiwanese recognize that, but let's not go down that track.
Right.
I haven't been out to Qinghai or Tibet as yet, or Yunnan, which are the kind of the southwestern and western provinces. And there's no good reason why I haven't been, apart from time and money. I didn't have enough money before. Now I could probably go. COVID is kind of restricting travel a little bit. Although I have just been to Jiangsu, Chongqing, Hubei, and several cities in Guangdong in the last 2 months. So I've done a lot of traveling in the last couple of months. That's another thing that I do cherish, the ability to travel around to different parts of China freely. It's really, really nice. As far as where I haven't been, there's not that many places. And many of them, I don't just fly in and fly out. I cycle through. So, for example, Inner Mongolia, Ningxia, where else? Gansu, Xinjiang. It's really nice to be able to say I've been there, and I've also experienced every aspect of it. Sometimes we stay in a 4-star hotel. Occasionally, very, very rarely, we're directed to a 5-star hotel as being the only place that takes foreigners, but we try to avoid them. And most of the time we stay in places that, I don't know how good your Chinese was, but this is a bingguan, which is a guest house, effectively. It's like a bed and breakfast in the West. And very often they're the best places to stay. They quite often have the owners of the house where you're living upstairs will be the cook and the waitress in the restaurant downstairs. So I kind of like that. And I like to talk to those people, about their life. And one thing I have learned all through my travels is every single person that I know tells me that their life today is better than it used to be. And they're quite positive that their children's life will be better than theirs. And that's something that you can't really replace. It really is fantastic. Right now, I've got an Australian passport and I'm British born. And I'm looking at my two countries where I come from, and both of them have some negativity and bad feeling about the future. China doesn't have that. What it does have is negativity and bad feeling about what everyone else thinks about it, but it doesn't have internally the issues or the fears of the future. The long-term focus of Chinese people is very positive. It's not so positive in England right now.
Why do you say so?
Well, today is the day that Liz Truss became the Prime Minister of England. I don't think she's a very highly regarded person. I'm not going to comment on Liz Truss personally. I don't know enough about her. But the things I'm hearing, the things that I'm seeing on Twitter and reading the news, it's not very positive. They've also got massive inflation. They've got incredibly huge fuel bills coming. And people are afraid of the long term or even the next 2 to 3 years. I don't think many people are looking forward to winter this year. Now, quite a lot of people look forward to winter because they go skiing and they like the snow or whatever it is. Some people don't like it to be too hot and they look forward to winter. Right now in England, I don't think anyone is looking forward to winter because their fuel bills are going up by thousands, or if not thousands, hundreds of %. That's not a good place to be. My gas that heats my water and cooks all my food cost me 130 RMB for about 7 weeks.
All right, so, talking about bills, let's talk about the cost of living in China as compared to where you come from.
Well, it's hard for me to compare because I haven't lived overseas for many, many years. So in terms of comparison, I can tell you what I pay here. I bought an apartment for 300,000 RMB, which is 50,000 US dollars, thereabouts.
An apartment?
Yeah, a 2-bedroom apartment, yeah. And then I converted it into a 1-bedroom with a large kitchen and diner. So it's only really suitable for a couple to live in. You can't have a family here, but I'm not looking to have a family. We don't even have guests here, but we've got hotels around the corner. So yeah, I mean that gives you an idea. And that was 5 years ago I bought this one. And it cost me 50,000. It's probably now worth 100, maybe 110,000 US dollars. If we turn that into pounds, it's probably worth about 70,000 pounds for an apartment. So that tells you my electricity bill is 350 RMB, 25 pounds, $70, something like that.
So really, to reduce your life better in China?
Oh yeah, very much. But I'm retired now. I make a little bit of money from an editing job that I do, but that's not inside of China because I can't legally work here. I have a pension from one of my previous jobs in the UK. I was a police officer for 10 years and they gave me a pension. And I started collecting that when I was 60 years old. And that's really my income. Right. But I can live comfortably on it. I only worked 10 years. I still have other pensions, which I don't claim yet, my Australian superannuation. And that's available for me to claim later when I need it. But right now, it's just not necessary. So I just bide my time and hopefully let that grow. But at the moment, it's like everything else that's invested, it's not growing. So I just leave it there for the time being.
I mean, from your experience here, what do you think that people coming into China now, because people come into China with this preconceived idea about what China should be.
Yeah.
Right? And they get here, and it's
if you've got preconceived ideas about what China should be, you shouldn't come here because China should be what China wants it to be. The Chinese people choose what they want it to be, and we shouldn't interfere with that. We can either support it, we can criticize it, but the fact is we can't change it, and we shouldn't even think about trying. If you want to change China's governance, go live somewhere else and try and change theirs, because Chinese people will not accept that. The Chinese are pretty happy with that. If you're coming here with a perception of what China is, you're probably wrong and you'd know this, but you're probably wrong if you're reading Western news media and that's your perception of China, bad luck. It's not what you expect it to be. You're expecting an authoritarian, totalitarian, dictatorial. You're expecting all of that. It's entirely not any of those things. So I would suggest that people come here with an open mind. That's my only advice to them. Open your mind up. Hopefully let people see what the real China is by watching people like you, watching people like me on YouTube, and
so you mean, in your opinion, you mean that China is not going to change for anybody? China will only change for the Chinese people, and that's
China's constantly changing. There's no question about that. It's constantly changing. It's constantly improving, and it's constantly reviewing and revising. I mean, this is an every year process. They have these congresses that get together every year to direct and steer the course of the country. And those people are elected by their own local people, and they have their own local agendas, but they're steering the direction of the country into the direction that the people want, led by the Communist Party. Now, whether you approve of that or not doesn't really matter, because it's only the 1.4 billion people who live here who need to approve of it. And if you say, but they don't get a chance to choose, well, what did they do in 1911? They got a chance and they chose. What did they do in 1949? They got a chance and they chose. Now, if the Communist Party needs to be unseated, let the people of China decide that, right. Not the people of the State Department or the Foreign Office or wherever else that those decisions are being made. That's the only thing I can say. Keep an open mind. Enjoy what the differences are and experience them. It's a great place to live and be. So there's a lot to experience.
There's a lot to experience. So why did you choose to start a YouTube channel called Jerry's Take on China? What is it about?
Jerry's Take on China was an offshoot of my Twittering. You know, I'm on Twitter. It was building up, and I got to somewhere like 50-something thousand followers, and people kept saying, "Why don't you do videos? You should do videos. You should extend this." Now, I write a lot. I write articles. I'm an article writer, and sometimes I'm lucky enough to get published. When that happens, I'm lucky enough to get paid a little bit months down the track. You know, there's not a job, and you don't earn money by being published on Chinese media. I can assure anybody of that. Or you don't earn a living. Let's say it that way. But what I do is I post things on a site called Medium.com, and on that site I have articles about China. And somebody came to me a while ago and said, "You should read your articles as a script." And I said, but Medium does that already. If you want, you can click on listen to a reading of this article. And they said, no. I mean, you do it, your voice. You've got an authoritative voice, and people respect you. And I said, really? But yeah, it was one person who kind of pushed me down that track, and the Jerry's Take on China came from that. So I actually started another Twitter channel called Jerry's Take on China with a view to being non-political, totally non-political. And Jerry's China, which is very political, really. That was the idea. But what's happened is no matter what I try and do, people attack me politically. You know, I might say something nice about the high-speed railway, and someone else will come in and say, yeah, but at what cost? You know, they're defrauding the state and going into debt. And this is on a travel document. No, they're not doing that at all. Read this. And I found that now what I've got is 2 political channels, and probably equally as political as the other. It's not what I set out to do at all, but it works out for me because I'm building up followers on both of them. And if I ever get banned on one, then I'll be okay on the other. The fact is, I've never even had a warning. I've never had a strike on Twitter. And because I keep it clean, I keep it honest, I keep it reasonable. If I'm really angry with someone, I hit the block button rather than hit the verbal abuse. And that's the best way I can handle it. You know, when people are rude to me, my favorite question is, what happened to you when you were in China to make you feel that way? And the answer is always, I wouldn't set foot in China. Well, how do you know then?
But the point is, most of these guys that really criticize a lot about China, they have never set foot in China.
Right. Yeah, that's right. So that turns out to be an interesting aspect. So that's how Jerry's Take on China YouTube started. Because I was basically what I do is I read scripts of my articles. And when I write an article, I'll turn it into a video too and put a few little things in there. And I've got a couple of friends who help me with that because I'm terrible at editing. No, I'm terrible. I hate editing. I'm not an editor at all. So yeah, it started as a result of people telling me you should make videos. Now, I only started that 4 or 5 months ago, I think, and it's already risen up to 2,500. It's going better than I thought it would. I mean, if I can hit 5,000 followers by the end of the year, I'll be high-fiving down the street.
You can even hit that. You can even hit that within this month. If you keep up.
I'm not going to take a bet on that.
So yeah, guys, go to Jerry's Take on China. Subscribe to his channel. Follow him if you want to know more about China politically.
Now I might hit it.
He's the right person to talk to you. People come to me like, why don't you talk about what is going in the human rights abuse in China? I have zero idea about what is happening in China when it comes to human rights abuse. So I can't go there, right? I have my field. I want to interview people to share their experience, just like I'm doing with you. But people come to me to say things that they want me to do.
The best thing you can do is to tell China as it is, as you see it on a daily basis. And that is the real China. Now, the human rights abuses, I have my own theories on the human rights abuses. And
I saw your video.
Yeah, well, there's another one tomorrow. So, yeah, the human rights abuses are a farce. It's effectively the whole thing is a farce. Now, yes, there was a clampdown on Uyghur Muslims. There was a clampdown on Uyghur terrorists, Uyghur separatists, and some of them were Uyghur Muslims. Yeah, there was a clampdown, but it was a hell of a lot easier than the clampdown that they would put into, like they did in Iraq and in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Yemen, in Libya, all these places where they just start killing people, dropping bombs, 1 million people dead, 30 million refugees. There's none of that happening. And I've been through and I've traveled extensively inside of Xinjiang. I've never seen anything to concern me except a high police presence, a high security presence. And it's there for a damn good reason. I mean, we all know this is not a made up story. Hundreds and hundreds of people died as a result of extremism in that region. What has China done about that? Stopped it from happening completely. No one has died since, I think, 2016. And, we're talking 6 years now. There hasn't been a death. And I'm not just talking about the terrorists killing people. Not even a terrorist has been killed in that time. What does that tell you about the way that they're managing this? It tells you something pretty special. They can't do this in Europe. They're shooting people, and they can't do it in America. They're shooting people. They certainly aren't doing it in the Middle East and North Africa, where they're shooting and killing people. They're not doing that in China. Okay, some people got locked up who shouldn't have been, and that's bad. I agree. There are some people who've been mistreated, and that's also bad, and I agree. And there should be reparations for anybody who was unlawfully treated. I'm 100% in favor of that. Right. Now, if a police officer overreacted, if police officers engaged in torture or anything like that, the Chinese government does not condone that. And it's in their constitution, it's in their laws. There is no torture, there is no forced labor, there is no enslavery for punishment. None of these things happen in China. None of them have ever happened. So that's the reason why I stand up and say that. So if you have someone ask you about those human rights, send them my way and I'll answer the question.
Right, I'll send them the link to your video to go watch, because I have zero knowledge about those things, so that's not my field. So you are the right person that people can come to for explanation.
Well, I have a background in crime and security. I mean, I worked 10 years as a police officer and 18 years in the security industry, and I do know a little bit about prisons. I know a little bit about terrorism. I've seen bombs. I've seen the result of bombs, and I don't want to ever do that again. And I've said this before in interviews. I wish when I was in London, we had the powers that the police in Xinjiang have. And I really do wish that were the case. Now, having said that, police have enormous powers in China, but you'll know this for a fact. They don't wield them at all. They don't. I mean, police are highly respected. They're loved by the Chinese people in general. I mean, there's obviously people who don't love them, but in general, the police are very well liked because they're very helpful. They're very nice people. You do something wrong, they're more likely to invite you in and drink tea with you and tell you not to do that again. They even have an expression in Chinese, I was invited to drink tea. And it means I got told off by the police, but it doesn't mean you get into serious trouble. Then they have these minor infractions where they put people into what they call administrative detention for 7 days, 14 days, or 30 days. And they don't need court cases, so they come out without any record. If you get caught drink driving, you go to 30 days detention immediately. And this is written into the law. They can do this. And people say, well, that's authoritarian. But yeah, it is. But what are they doing? They're stopping you from drink driving and killing people, potentially killing people. When you steal something, when you break into somewhere, instead of getting a criminal record, you get a 7-day detention and then you're released with some kind of re-education telling you why you shouldn't be doing it. And then quite often, if you're homeless, for example, you are given a train ticket and put on a train back to your hometown where you belong, and that your hometown will rehouse you. We don't have homeless problems here. And people say there's hundreds of thousands of homeless people in Guangzhou alone. Yeah, there are a lot of people who choose as migrant workers to sleep because the weather is really mild. They would rather sleep under the roadway there because it's near to their work. The dormitory costs them 100 RMB a week, and this is free. So that's what they choose to do. They're not homeless. They've got homes. They're making a choice, and that choice is their own. They don't have to sleep there. So yeah, when you see homeless people in China, it's usually workers who are avoiding the cost of a dormitory. And they're saving the money so that money is being used back in their hometowns in one of the poorer provinces. I mean, it's still a developing country. There's no question about that. China's still developing, and some of these habits of developing countries still persist, even in rapidly developing cities like Guangzhou. Now, Shenzhen has none of that, none at all, because the Shenzhen Special Economic Zone, they have very strong laws about what you can and can't do. In Guangzhou, they just say, oh, it doesn't matter, just let them go. But in Shenzhen, they're pretty strict. There's no loitering, there's no jaywalking, there's no dangerous driving. It's a really, really civilized place. And it's a place that's developed, fully developed. Zhuhai's the same.
Yeah. Not taking so much of your time. Do you see yourself living in China for the next 3-5 years?
Someone asked me if I can see myself dying in China, but honestly, I'm going to live forever. I don't think I see myself dying at all, but if I do, it'll be in China, I'm fairly sure. I love traveling out. I mean, I haven't been home to see. My father is 91 years old in the UK. I haven't seen him in 3 years. My daughter is in Australia, and I haven't seen her in 3 years. And those kinds of things really do make life a little difficult. It's hard. You know, I lost my son while I was here and couldn't get out to go. No, it's okay. It's happened a year and a half ago, and we're through that now. But it was a really, really tough time. I couldn't even get out of China. And if I could get out of China, Australia weren't going to let me in because I came from China. And these sorts of things really hurt. They're really painful. There's a lot of things that make life difficult. But the fact is, my life here is better than it would be if I was living in Australia or the UK. So yeah, I do see myself staying here.
Right. One more before we go.
Okay, one more.
We see that most of the countries around the world, they have moved on when it comes to this COVID policy, but China is still holding on to this COVID. I think there's even lockdown in Shenzhen, in some part of China. What is your take on that?
Okay, I'll be honest. I'm 100% in favor of the COVID zero or dynamic zero policy. I'm 100% behind that.
Why do I
want to? Well, take a look at, for example, Australia. I looked at the figures today for Australia. 14,000 people in Australia are dead. Now, a year ago, Australia had no COVID problems. They had some minor cases here, and and they were locking down in different places. But then they said, "Oh, let's just forget about all this and go." Now they listened to their scientists. Their scientists gave this advice. I think they listened. Hope they listened to some scientists. But the advice turns out to have been not correct. 14,000 Australians have died of COVID. Hospitals are overwhelmed. There's 300 people a day entering intensive care or some kind of palliative care where they need oxygen. Now, 300 people a day. China does not have enough beds. It's still a developing country, and the per capita number of hospital beds, of course, it's got more hospital beds than Australia, but the per capita number is much less than Australia. China cannot afford that. Now, do I want to be locked down? No. Do I want to go into quarantine? No. Do I approve of all the testing that I have to go through when I travel? No, I don't like it. But do I approve of the reason behind it? 100%. Absolutely 100%. And you know, when people say to me, yeah, but it doesn't give you any freedom. I'm alive, and I don't know anybody who's had COVID, nor do I know anybody who knows anybody who's had COVID. So that tells you something good about the country. 6,000 people in this entire country of 1.4 billion have died of COVID. 14,000 people have died in a country that has around the same population as Shanghai. Australia and Shanghai, very, very close in population numbers. 14,000 are dead. Now imagine if Shanghai had not done what it did and locked down when it locked down. We already got 1,500 more dead people during that period of time, but they locked down. If they hadn't locked down, where would that be? And it's certainly, I'm sure, because of the density of the population, it would have been much higher than the 14,000 that Australia's got spread over one of the largest islands in the world. Spread that. You've got dense cities in Sydney and Melbourne, even that Brisbane is a fairly dense city. But you've still got 14,000 dead people that you don't have in China. And why don't you have 14,000 dead people in one city of China? Because they locked it down and said, we're not going to let this disease spread. Do you like it? No. Do you want it? Absolutely not. Do you approve of it? For me, yes, I do. And I'm sorry, I cannot accept anybody who tells me I'm wrong. They should just let people open up, because I've actually lost an uncle. I've got family who suffered long COVID. And in China, I don't have any of that. None of my family, none of my friends, no one that I know has got that worry on their life. And right. So that's why I support it.
Yeah, that's your take. And you're right about that.
Jerry's take,
Before we go, what is your last message for the people watching this video around the world? People who are out of China, they have this preconceived ideas about China, conceptions about China. What do you want to tell them?
I would say that if you take an idea of China that you've read in mainstream media, you are about 90% ill-informed, maybe higher, 98% ill-informed. Every single thing that you read about China starts with a kernel of truth. There's 2% truth. And then there's the interpretation or the misinterpretation. And then there's the deliberate lies. There are people who, they work in media here in China, who deliberately lie about what they know. They deliberately lie because they're selling a story. Now, I know those people, and they won't interact with me on Twitter. They block me because I asked them a question. Every single one of them has blocked me at some stage. There is nobody left in the BBC, CNN, any of those media outlets that are talking about China who will interact with me. And I'm not rude. I'm never aggressive or assertive with them. I simply ask a question. What about? Why did you say this when you know this? That kind of thing. And then I get blocked. So, yeah, I would say anything that you believe you know, if you learned it from media, the chances are you're wrong.
What do you want people to know about China before coming here? Yeah.
Okay, I would say if anybody wants to know about China, go online and find people inside of China and learn from them. If whatever you learn from Western media, you are about 90% wrong. They will either deliberately misinform you or they will misinterpret, so they are not deliberately, but misinforming you anyway. And that's the way. I would say interact with people in China. By all means, anybody wants to, they can send me a Twitter DM. My DMs are open on Twitter. They can contact me through YouTube. And I'm quite happy to answer any questions. Now, anybody, even people who are detractors, if they ask a reasonable question, I'll give them a reasonable answer. But you know, I get the you're the paid shill of the CCP and how do you live with yourself and things like that. Well, all I can say is if you've got a problem with what I'm saying, tell me what the problem is. Tell me why you think you're right and you think I'm wrong. and I'll explain to you why I think I'm right. I mean, maybe that I am wrong. I might have a statistic incorrect or something like that. But in terms of what happens in China, mainstream media is mostly wrong. And that's all I can say. If you're coming to China, come with an open mind and be prepared to be very, very surprised if your perceptions are built on what you've read or learned or seen from media in the West. That's the only thing I can say.
Yeah, this is the word for my man, Jerry. Be prepared to be surprised in China. I want to say thank you so much for, coming on board to have this conversation with me.
Sure,
I think
no problem.
at the time, and I'm so grateful to you. I just sent a DM, and here we are having this conversation. And I believe that this conversation will help people to know more about China life here.
I hope so.
The ordinary life of us here in China, and these are based on people's real life experience. I even get people telling me that I've been paid to do these videos. I'm sitting in my own room here in the city of Weihai, in the Shandong province of China, and you are exchanging, we're having this conversation. So thank you so much.
I'm actually in Zhongshan, which is on the other side of the river from Shenzhen, but not far away. We're going to have a bridge there. That's another of the infrastructure projects. There's a bridge across the river there coming in the next, I think it'll be in 18 months' time. It'll be open. It's one of the longest sea bridges in the world. They keep doing it. Yeah, it is. It really is. Yeah.
So, guys, go
King
to
Kwesi, thank you.
China, subscribe to his channel, follow him on Twitter if you want to know more about China, and let's keep going. Thank you so much, sir, for having this conversation.
No trouble at all. Thank you very much indeed for the invitation, and it's a great chat.